The evening rain had just stopped falling on the downtown streets when Marcus Richardson stepped out of his black sedan and onto the wet pavement, his expensive gray coat protecting him from the lingering dampness in the air. At 37, he was the CEO of Richardson Financial, a man whose success had come at the cost of almost everything else that mattered. Tonight, after another 18-hour day of meetings and negotiations, he was heading home to an empty penthouse that felt more like an elegant prison than a sanctuary. As Marcus walked toward the entrance of his luxury apartment building, he noticed a small figure sitting on the steps leading up to the neighboring brownstone. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, sat quietly in a pink dress, her curly hair catching the glow of the street lamps. She appeared to be waiting for someone, but what struck Marcus most was the patient sadness in her posture. "Excuse me, sweetheart," Marcus said, stopping despite his usual practice of avoiding interactions with strangers. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" The little girl looked up at him with serious brown eyes that seemed far too wise for her age. "My mommy is upstairs," she said softly. "She is having one of her sad days, so I came outside to wait for her smile to come back." Marcus felt something twist in his chest at the innocence of her explanation. "What do you mean by sad days?" "Sometimes mommy cries a lot and cannot get out of bed," the child explained with the matter-of-fact acceptance that children develop when dealing with adult problems beyond their understanding. "When she has sad days, I try to be very quiet and good so I do not make it worse." Marcus recognized the signs immediately. He had watched his own mother struggle with depression throughout his childhood, and he understood the particular burden that fell on children who tried to take care of parents who were drowning in their own pain. "What is your name?" Marcus asked gently, kneeling down so he would be at her eye level. "I am Emma," she replied. "What is your name?" "I am Marcus." "Emma, how long has your mommy been having sad days?" Emma considered this question with the careful thought that children give to time concepts they do not fully grasp. "Since Daddy went to heaven. That was a very long time ago, maybe when I was 3. Marcus felt his heart break a little more as he realized that this little girl had been essentially caring for a grieving mother for over a year, trying to be good enough and quiet enough to somehow fix an adult problem that was beyond her control. "Emma, do you think your mommy might need some help?" Marcus asked carefully. "She says she is fine, but I do not think fine people cry so much," Emma replied with the brutal honesty of childhood. "I try to make her happy by being good, but it does not work very well." Marcus looked at this precious child who was carrying a weight no 4-year-old should bear, and made a decision that surprised him. "Emma, would you like me to meet your mommy? Sometimes it helps to have another grown-up who can help take care of things." Emma studied his face with the careful assessment that children learn when they need to determine whether adults are safe. After a moment, she reached out and took his hand with the trust that comes from desperation. "Mommy needs a smile," she said simply, as if this explained everything. "Maybe you can help her find it." That small hand in his larger one sent an unexpected jolt through Marcus. When was the last time someone had reached for him with genuine need rather than calculated self-interest? When had anyone last touched him without wanting something in return? "Let me talk to your mommy," Marcus said, allowing Emma to lead him up the steps to her building. The apartment Emma led him to was on the 3rd floor, accessible through a door that had seen better days but was kept as clean as possible. Emma used a key she wore on a string around her neck, revealing a small but tidy space that spoke of someone doing their best with very limited resources. "Mommy," Emma called out softly, "I brought someone to meet you. He might be able to help you find your smile." A woman emerged from what appeared to be a bedroom, clearly having just woken up despite the late hour. She was probably in her early 30s with blonde hair that needed attention, and the particular exhaustion that comes from battling invisible demons every day. "Emma, what have I told you about talking to strangers?" the woman said, though her voice held more weariness than anger. "I am sorry to intrude," Marcus said quickly. "I am Marcus Richardson. I live in the building next door, and I met Emma outside. She seemed concerned about you, and I wanted to make sure you both were all right." The woman looked at Marcus with suspicion mixed with embarrassment. "I am Sarah Chen. Emma should not have bothered you with our problems. We are fine." "Mommy, you are not fine," Emma said with the directness that only children possess. "You have been crying again and you did not eat dinner." Marcus saw Sarah's face crumple slightly at her daughter's observation, and he recognized the particular shame that comes from knowing you are failing someone who depends on you completely. "Sarah," Marcus said gently, "I do not mean to overstep, but Emma is worried about you. Is there anything I can do to help?" Sarah looked at this well-dressed stranger who had somehow become involved in her private struggle, and felt the walls she had built around her pain begin to crack. "I lost my husband in a car accident 18 months ago," she said quietly. "I have been trying to hold things together for Emma, but some days it feels impossible. Today was one of those days." Marcus nodded with understanding rather than judgment. "Sarah, grief is not something you can just push through by willpower. Have you been able to talk to anyone about what you are going through?" "I cannot afford counseling," Sarah replied honestly, "and I do not have family nearby who could help. With Emma, if I needed to take time to deal with this properly." Marcus looked at Emma, who had settled onto a worn couch with a coloring book, clearly accustomed to adult conversations that revolved around problems she could not solve. "Sarah, what if I told you that I might be able to help with some of these practical concerns? I have resources that are not being used for anything meaningful, and Emma has already taught me something important tonight." "What could a 4-year-old possibly teach you?" Sarah asked. Marcus looked at Emma, who was now coloring a picture of a family with careful concentration. "She taught me that sometimes the most important thing we can do is reach out and ask someone else to help carry the load." Over the next hour, Marcus learned about Sarah's struggles as a single mother, her attempts to work part-time while caring for Emma, and her growing sense that she was failing at the most important job she would ever have. Marcus shared his own experience of growing up with a depressed parent, and his understanding of how isolating and frightening it could be for both the adult and the child. "Sarah, I have a proposition for you," Marcus said finally. "I would like to help you get the professional support you need to work through your grief. I would also like to help with childcare for Emma so you can focus on healing without worrying about whether you are damaging your daughter." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Why would you do that for people you just met?" Marcus looked at Emma, who had abandoned her coloring to listen to the adult conversation, with the serious attention she gave to discussions that might affect her life. "Because Emma took my hand tonight and told me that her mommy needed a smile," Marcus replied. "In that moment, she reminded me that success without compassion is just expensive loneliness. She offered me something I had not realized I was missing, the chance to matter to someone in a way that actually counts." 6 months later, Marcus sat in Sarah and Emma's new apartment, which he had helped them move to after Sarah completed an intensive therapy program that had given her the tools to manage her grief and depression. Sarah had returned to work as a graphic designer, and Emma was enrolled in an excellent preschool program that gave her the chance to be a child rather than a caregiver. "You know," Sarah said as they watched Emma play with the toys that now filled her room, "I never properly thanked you for what you did that night." "You do not need to thank me," Marcus replied. "Emma changed my life as much as I changed yours. She taught me that the most important investments are not in portfolios or real estate, but in people who need someone to care whether they find their smile again." Emma ran over to them, climbing onto Marcus's lap with the easy affection she had developed for the man who had become like a father to her. "Marcus, do you remember when I said Mommy needed a smile?" Emma asked. "I remember." "Well, now she has her smile back and you have one too," Emma observed with satisfaction. "I think that worked out very well." Marcus hugged this little girl who had taught him that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with a simple touch and the courage to trust a stranger with your deepest need. Sometimes the most important business deals are negotiated, not in boardrooms but on wet steps where a child reaches out to take your hand and reminds you that every person you meet is carrying something heavy, and that the greatest success comes from helping others find reasons to smile again.